My name is Zainab Patel, and I am the National Manager for Health and Human Rights. And I work with a UN agency called UNDP. And I've in August I'll be completing 10 years of my association with UNDP. I'm also a woman, as you could see, but I'm a transgender woman. I belong to an ethnic group, socio-cultural, ethnic, religious group called Hijras, and I feel extremely proud to be part of this community and to present myself and my idea in front of you today. Thank you. Among all the things that we experience in India, we see TV, and I was speaking to one of the panelists. Someone mentioned Gorakhpur, and someone came up and said, "No, there are other things important in Gorakhpur as well." So one of the things I'm extremely proud of about being born in India is the Guru's Chela Sampradaya. The lineage of having a master and a disciple. And every one of us in this room, every single person in this room has either heard someone speak, recited it at some point of time, or read about it. It's the Guru Mantra, right? Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Deva Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Guru Vin. So on the screen, what you have is this really amazingly fierce woman. She's my Guru. She is Acharya Mahamandeshwar Lakshmi Narayan Tripathi. She belongs to the Hijra community. But for me, she's everything. She's a mother, she's a friend, she's a companion, she's a teacher, and my fiercest critique. And the most loyal protector for me. The reason I mention her is she gave me purpose to my life. And just like Rajiv spoke about Ikigai, finding purpose and reason to my existence, this is someone who gave me purpose to live. I, Ma, Mom, Amma, everyone. This kind of brings out a very fuzzy feeling in you, right? Different words, but the same emotion, love. So in my life, I've been fortunate to have two mothers. One is my biological mother, the one in red, who's smiling down on me from heaven. And the other is Gauri Sawant, another transgender activist, a transgender mother, and a famous social innovator who brought in the concept of transgender adopting children. Both of these mothers taught me that life is just not about living, it's about giving, it's about gratitude, and it's about fighting in all kinds of adversities. I come from a country where there are lots and lots of religious texts. But we talk about religious iconography, right? One of this particular image of Shiva and Shakti merging together, Ardhanarishwar. Everyone has heard about this? Probably seen this on TV, on posters, on the road. But what does that mean to you? This is part of a community. Scriptures, culture, which kind of recognize that there is more than what meets your eye. Then there is something more than just the binary of being a man or a woman. So I'm very proud to be a part of a culture that recognizes this. I also come from a country where you have Mohini and Harihara Putra. Then what happened? Hindu sculptures mention Dev, Danav, Gandharva, Asur, Kinnar. What happened to this community which was once Upadevta status, demigod status? And today? This picture was taken in the early 1900s. British were just about to vacate the country, and this photograph was taken somewhere in northern India. And the label that goes with this photograph is that here are two immoral prostitutes. Now imagine you're also a prostitute but also being immoral. So I think you can't degrade any further than that. So among the many things that British left behind for us in India, this kind of thing got also left out by Shashi Tharoor when he was writing his book on British colonialism in India. What they did is they made transgender people, whom they famously called them as eunuchs because they brought in the biblical thinking behind it. They made us something called criminal tribes. There were many tribes and different populations who were considered criminal by birth. So in 1851, the British brought in a legislation called the Criminal Tribes Act. So the fact that even you were born in that community made you a criminal. So you were a criminal by birth. So the transgender community at that point of time was a criminal by birth, because if you were associated with this community, you were a criminal. That means even if you couldn't dance, you couldn't, if you were born in a male body, you couldn't cross dress, you couldn't beg, you couldn't survive. It almost led out to wiping the community out. But we survived. We've survived 200 years of the British. We've survived 72 years of India's independence. So, what happened to that community, which was a demigod, and suddenly today becomes a beggar on the street? Someone who's fighting for mere survival, and the only way you can do that is either by begging. So, imagine this is a community which is kind of pushed back to the fringes of society. They only come when there's childbirth or something auspicious. Have you ever seen a transgender visit someone when someone has died? They're only auspicious, but they're pushed back to them. Let me leave you with this thought and come back to that in probably 5 minutes. Coming to my story. So I was telling Sandeep and Vishwapriya that they have son who has floppy hair, and that's me with floppy hair when I was a kid. So in January 38 years ago, I was born on a cold morning. It was Makar Sankranti, when people celebrated all over India. So I was born to a Catholic family. So interesting, right? Catholic family can chant Sanskrit verses, but practicing Sufi Islam. So, so I'm kind of sabka saath, sabka vikas type. So I was born. So I was born to a family which, very interestingly, is my mother came from Mangalore, and the only two languages that she could speak were Tulu and Kannada. And when she came to Mumbai, she didn't even have slippers on her feet when she came to Mumbai and she got married. She saw some extremely sad days as a teenager. But she learned to cook, she learned to speak Hindi, she learned to speak English, she homeschooled all of us. So that's me and my elder sister. You can see the semblance and the pouty lips. So that's the cuter one is me. The not so cuter one is my sister. So I have two elder sisters, one 10 years elder to me and one 8 years. So when I was born in Wadia Hospital in Mumbai, it's a government hospital, my parents were like waiting with anticipation, because it was 8 years after my second sister was born. And they said my father was praying and he was doing his St. Anthony's Novena, praying to St. Anthony, let it be a boy, let it be a boy, someone to take the name forward. And the doctor comes in and said, yes, it's a boy. And my father like, yay, and everyone is like, good, good, someone to take the name forward. But kya kare? I mean, they were destined to have another girl. It's just that the doctor miscalculated me to be a boy at that point of time. चलो नाम कमा लिया, but नाम बेटा बन के नहीं, बेटी बन के ही नाम का. So when I was born, can you count out till 9? 1. Yeah, that's the number of time I tried to hurt myself. That's the number of time I actually hurt myself. When I reached the 9th time, it was Christmas Eve, and I decided I just can't deal with this. I cannot deal with this. I cannot deal with the societal pressures. I cannot deal with this. This was the time when I was in Mumbai and they had a new curriculum. So Atishi in the morning mentioned trigonometry and all that kind of rubbish which you never use in life. So that's the year when trigonometry was actually introduced in Mumbai curriculum. That's the time I decided to end my life, and I reached the hospital and I was in coma. And my poor parents were battling, running back and forth, and they were not really very educated, didn't know what to do. But I survived through that. I lost 2 years of education. I lost my motor, sensory, peripheral nerves lost their capacity. I couldn't hold a pen. I couldn't see beyond 100 meters. And that's the time I said, no. I mean, that isn't how it ends. That's my journey beginning. I was meant to be fabulous. I was meant to be beautiful. I was meant to be charming. And I was meant to be a professional. Started. I made up my mind. I'm going to challenge every given stereotype, I'm going to break every given mindset and I'm going to prove it to my parents that they did not make a mistake in me. So then, after finishing college, I said, let's look at other interesting things in life. And every cloud has a silver lining. Mine had a little bit of gold, white sapphires, and a ruby. I met the man of my life. He's handsome, but he's also shy. So I only decided to put his hand on my hand. So sorry for that. Yes, we met. The UN gave me an opportunity to travel, and they also recognized my partnership. So we got married in South Africa. So yes, I am married. But that's not the challenge. The challenge was to prove to everyone that things can change, perceptions can change, and more importantly, you can break every known stereotypes. I served for 10 years in the UN, 7 years at the country office, liaising with the government, 3 years in International Service Commission, working as a policy analyst for human rights. I then did my transition. That's a pretty looking slimmer me a couple of years ago, along with and that's where my journey began, transitioning. So when we say transitioning, what does that mean? Does that mean that tomorrow I just get up and I say, enough of my male body, I am going to appear like a beautiful woman and dress up? No. It is challenging. Have you ever tried to wear like an extra tight bra or an extra tight fitting t-shirt or or clothes that do not fit? Imagine you're going for a wedding and you have to only like suck in your paunch or try to remain straight. And you know try to be stiff all the time. True. Have you all experienced that? Sometime or the other, you want to look prim and proper. That's what is when you're talking about transitioning. So you are in a body that doesn't really fit you, but you have to kind of pull it, pull through your life, pull through the entire. And that's the time I decided enough is enough. And that's the beautiful me post transitioning. In case you wanted to see how I looked before my transitioning, the last image was that. You can ignore that. But so this is. So in 2014, we went to the Supreme Court. 2013, actually, we went to the Supreme Court and said, I do not trust politicians. I do not trust bureaucrats. I do not trust anyone. I only believe in the constitution that B.R. Ambedkar wrote to our country and said, everyone is equal in my country. And we wanted that to come out from the Supreme Court. We took a huge risk. We were just 3 of us. So 3 of us went to the Supreme Court. We fought in the Supreme Court and they gave us a phenomenal judgment. And that judgment is nothing short of a miracle, because in the entire Asia Pacific at that point of time, there was no judgment which allowed any person without undergoing any change in their body to identify as a man, woman, or transgender. So tomorrow, if one of you decides to say, I am not a man, I am a woman, the Supreme Court of India allows you to do that. So yes, thank you to the Supreme Court for making that, by making us equal citizens. And we are not we don't have equity, but yes, we are in the race. We are equal citizens. We are finding our way through this, in this thing. What happened after that is, like most other things, your family disowns you. Everyone has different priorities. My mother passed away. Each of our siblings decided that it was better for them to focus on their own lives. That's when we have families of choice. You know, as a privileged person in the room, you probably don't understand what families of choice are. Families of choice means nothing. When you have nothing else, you become families of choice. That is what my Hijra community taught me. And that is why I never feel ashamed to call myself a Hijra. Although in the last 1 year, we've just seen the end of the election season. 13 members of parliament, MLAs, called each other people names, including being called a Hijra, because they felt you're neither fit to be a man or a woman, you are a Hijra. You heard it, you probably heard debate. But I said, if you're a Hijra like me, be proud, you're neither a man nor a woman. I love my friends and my family, whoever they may be, because whoever stuck with me today, who's seeing the end finished product, is the one who's actually cared about me. They're fiercely protective about me, and I love them. The third thing is being English speaking, articulate, having the ability to walk into this building and speak to you. I am a privileged person. But the remaining 4,99,999 people estimated by the government of India to be transgenders in the country don't have that privilege. So I'm very mindful that I use my privilege to also talk about all those people in this who are not able to be in this room or who will never be part of this room, but with the hope that at some point of time they will be part of the discussion just as you are. The last is that, my tryst with my faith taught me to look at the Quran, the Bible, Bhagavatam, and find stories that matter for me. I urge you all to do that. Because until you look at yourself and see what's relevant, religious texts will only be wise words in an old book. Having said that, um, level up. For me, what that means is that if God ever gives me a chance to live a second life, would I choose one to be a man or a woman? Neither. I would still continue and come back as a transgender person, because being a transgender person has taught me the most valuable lessons on earth. And that taught me, do not compromise with your dreams, aspirations, because you have the power to make that come into reality. I used to pray to God often, but then, I remember this particular scene from this movie Bruce Almighty, and they said that if you need patience, would God make you patient, or would he provide you with opportunities to be patient? If you want to be brave, would God make you brave, or would he give you opportunities to be brave? If you want love, would God make you cute and adorable and lovely? He could do that. But he could also make you a vehicle to receive and give love.